There's a specific kind of magic that happens when someone is so deeply connected to their craft that the outside world simply melts away. For fans of automotive art, that magic lived in the Mojave Desert, inside a dusty, unair-conditioned workshop where a soft-spoken punk rocker named Ian Roussel performed miracles on rusted carcasses. Unlike the loud, drama-filled car shows that dominated television, Full Custom Garage was a meditation. It was just Ian, his torch, a pile of scrap metal, and the industrial soundtrack humming in his head. He wasn't a TV host. He was a shaman of steel. So when he vanished from the screen after 9 seasons, it wasn't just a schedule change. It felt like a death in the family. But the real tragedy wasn't a single event. It was a slow, brutal collision between an authentic artist and the unforgiving machinery of television. A collision that left him physically broken and emotionally gutted. To understand the fall, you have to first understand the foundation, and it was never built for the spotlight. Ian Roussel didn't come from a lineage of famous hot rodders or design school graduates. He was a self-taught hermit of the high desert who spoke the language of curves and contours better than he ever spoke English. He once famously admitted, "I'm not particularly into cars. It's my addiction, making them, creating all of these shapes." That confession is the key to his entire existence. He isn't a gearhead obsessed with horsepower. He is a sculptor who happens to use fenders as his canvas. When MAV TV came knocking in 2014, they weren't looking for another high-octane host. They were looking for a poet. But what the network gained in authenticity, Ian lost in solitude. The cameras didn't just document his work, they intruded upon his sanctuary, slowly turning his addiction into an obligation, and the heat of the desert began to mix with the pressure of production. For 9 seasons we watched him carve masterpieces out of junk, but we didn't feel the weight. The tragedy of Ian Roussel is that his art required a physical toll that no human body was meant to endure. His shop in the Mojave wasn't a climate-controlled studio, it was a tin oven. Imagine welding in 110-degree heat, grinding metal while dust sticks to your sweat, working 13-hour days not because a producer is yelling, but because Ian refuses to stop until the shape is right. That was his life for nearly a decade. While viewers admired the zen-like patience on screen, Ian's kidneys were quietly failing. Around late 2022, the bill came due. He suffered a severe heat-related collapse. This wasn't a dizzy spell, it was a shutdown. The diagnosis was minor kidney damage, a terrifying phrase for a man whose entire identity revolved around endurance. The desert had finally taken its payment for all those years of borrowed time, and for the first time, the man who could build anything couldn't fix his own body. But physical collapse rarely arrives alone. It brings friends. And in May 2022, tragedy struck a blow that no welding mask could deflect. Dude, Ian's dog, died. For those who watched Full Custom Garage, Dude wasn't just a pet, he was the co-star. He was the silent, four-legged conscience of the shop, wandering through the frame, lying under the lift, observing the madness with patient, soulful eyes. Dude represented the soul of the shop, the unconditional love that softened Ian's punk rock exterior. When Dude died of cancer, a piece of the Mojave died with him. Ian posted a simple, heart-wrenching tribute online, and the community felt it viscerally. Losing Dude meant the shop was quieter, lonelier, and suddenly, the isolation that once fueled Ian's creativity began to feel like a cage. Yet the most devastating tragedy here isn't the illness or the loss of a beloved pet. It is the quiet, unspoken betrayal of the entertainment industry. Hollywood loves the lone genius myth, but it rarely knows how to sustain it. The pressure to produce 9 seasons of content meant that Ian was forced to perform his authenticity on demand. The punk rocker who despised conformity was now enslaved to a production schedule. The man who hated blueprints had to work within the blueprint of a TV calendar. By 2023, the cracks were showing. Ian was exhausted, sick, and grieving. Instead of pushing through for the network, he did something radical. He quit. He walked away from the show that made him famous. But here is where Ian Roussel proves he is smarter than the system that tried to consume him. He didn't just fall apart, he pivoted. Before the final episodes of Full Custom Garage even aired in early 2024, Ian and his wife Jamie had already launched their YouTube channel, Full Custom Ian, in January 2023. This is the redemption arc hidden inside the tragedy. Ian realized that the network owned the show, but they didn't own him. On YouTube, he took back control. No more forcing a 3-week build into a 22-minute episode. No more pretending he didn't make mistakes. On his own channel, if he cuts a piece of metal wrong, you see him scratch his head and fix it. If the camera shakes, it shakes. If he wants to listen to Ministry for 4 hours while bead rolling a Fender, you hear every second of it. Jamie stepped into her role as producer fully, editing with the same handcrafted sensibility that Ian uses on steel. The tragedy of the television burnout became the triumph of digital freedom. However, just as the new chapter began to write itself, the final symbolic death occurred. The Desert Ranch shop closed. In September 2024, Ian and Jamie closed the doors on the physical location where the magic happened. For the fans, it felt like a pilgrimage site had been bulldozed. That shop was a character in the story. It was the place where Dude roamed, where the heat stroke struck, and where hundreds of junk cars became art. But Ian, ever the pragmatist, understood something that many grieving fans did. Not the spirit of the build doesn't live in the walls, it lives in the hands. Closing the Desert Ranch wasn't a surrender. It was an amputation of a gangrenous limb. The nostalgia was hurting him. To save the art, he had to kill the stage. So, where does that leave the devastating tragedy? If you look at the headlines, you see a man who lost his health, his dog, his TV show, and his shop. You might think the story is over, but you would be wrong. Ian Roussel is currently in a new shop, unburdened by the ghosts of the past. He is preparing a 1949 Metro van for SEMA 2025. He is building wild rat rods and a Volkswagen with Porsche-inspired lights. The tragedy is not that Ian Roussel is gone. The tragedy is that the television industry couldn't handle him. They broke him, but they couldn't stop him. Today, Ian works on his terms. The YouTube channel is thriving because it offers what Full Custom Garage promised, but couldn't always deliver: the raw, unvarnished truth of creation. He looks healthier, lighter, and happier because he is no longer performing the role of Ian Roussel. He simply is Ian Roussel. The heat stroke scared him into slowing down. Dude's death taught him that time is short. The closure of the shop taught him that home is wherever the welder is. The devastating tragedy of Ian Roussel is the story of a pure artist ground down by the gears of fame, but it is also a story of resurrection. He walked through the fire, literally, and came out the other side with his hands intact and his vision clear. The desert didn't kill him, it forged him. And if you know where to look on YouTube, he is still out there, turning rust into gold, one quiet, punk rock beat at a time.